Thank you guys for joining another NewsBits exclusive. Today we're going to be looking at crime and enforcement activity in New York City. So this is a report that presents statistics on race and ethnicity compiled from the New York City Police Department's record management system. So there's some statistical considerations we want to read through. I encourage you to do that. I'm not going to do that in this video because I don't want to lose you this early in the video, but please pause it or check out the link in the description to get yourself familiar. One that's going to be relevant for this next 10 seconds, 20 seconds, is Black Hispanic and white Hispanic categories have been combined into a single Hispanic category. Oftentimes in crime data or data in general, you'll see that Hispanics are grouped into the white. Understandably so. A lot of Hispanics are, descendants of people from Spain, and that's considered European. So here we're going to look at our census data, and this census is an awesome tool to look at demographic spreads. So we're looking at New York City, comparing apples to apples, and we're actually going to not look at this white cohort because this actually includes Hispanic. So the one we're going to look at is white alone, non-Hispanic, just so we're looking at the same data sets, across, the census data to the crime data in New York City. So whites are 32%, and I'm just going to keep it round for now. 32% of the population. Hispanics are 29.1. Two or more races are 3.6. Native Hawaiian and other Pacific Islander are 0.1. Asian is 14. American Indian and Alaska Native alone are 0.4, and blacks are 24.3% of the population in New York City. So we're going to keep this, somewhat quick and give you guys the data and links you need to be able to do your own research. But what we're going to be doing is keeping this up. We're going to be anchoring our data to the white cohort because that's, the least likely for me to get ridiculed in the comments, because I don't want to draw conclusions. I just want to make sure that we are understanding what normalization of the data is to the actual population distribution. So we're going to look kind of into the data. So we see it in three different ways. We see the human readable right here on the left, the data visualization here with a 3D bar chart, and then we see the table. So we're just going to say the three highest of victim and arrestee. Suspects are going to be, interesting data point, but less relevant because, anyone could be a suspect. It's really the arrestee or the perpetrator that got in trouble that is more defined data. So looking at victims, looking at victims, the highest victims of murder or non-negligent manslaughter in New York City at 65% is black, 26.4% is Hispanic, and 6.1 is white. Now, the highest perpetrators of murder and manslaughter is black at 60.2%, Hispanics at 32.1%, and then whites at Asian Pacific Islander at 4.1%. Now we're going to anchor to whites. Whites are 3.6% of the perpetrators for murder or manslaughter at 32% of the population. That's an underrepresentation of a factor of around 10, a little bit less than 10. And when I say that, and I'm just going to continue saying that for the rest of them, I'm saying that 32% of the population is white and 3.6% of the population, white population, or a population that, offended murders is white. So if the distribution was even and everybody committed the same amount of crime, we'd see that this murder rate would be 32.1%. It's actually interesting. We see that Hispanic is 32.1%. That's just a coincidence. The population is 29.1%, so they're slightly overrepresented in terms of murder and manslaughter. So now we're going to go to rape. The highest population percentage for rape in New York City is black at 42.2%, Hispanic at 34.9% is second, and then white is 17.2%. And when I say first, second, and third, this is just to be able to talk about the data. It's no competition or anything like that, and obviously it isn't. These are all wicked, atrocious crimes. So now let's look. So the highest number of perpetrators for rape in New York City is blacks at 44.5%, Hispanics at 40.3%, and whites at 6.7%. And we'll talk white. Like I said, I won't get ridiculed, or I will, but minimize my surface area for attacks. Whites are underrepresented in rape by a factor of about 5, and it looks like they're actually you see that there's kind of a times 2% chance that they, or almost times 3% chance that they're a victim than an arrestee. So there's a big disparity there. As you can see, the 40% for black is somewhat close to the 44%. So it looks like a lot more whites are being victims of rape than perpetrators. Any other cohorts like this? No, that's what I see there. So again, I'm going to present the data to you. I'm trying not to draw conclusions, so I'm going to get back just to reading the data. And I want you guys, if you're interested, to dig for yourself, because it's definitely worth a read. So other sex felony crimes or other felony sex crimes, the highest perpetrator is Hispanic at 37.4, Black at 36.4, and White at 17.8. Now the highest, those are the highest victims. Sorry if I said perpetrators. Now the highest perpetrators of other felony sex crimes are Hispanic at 50.1, Black at 31.5%, and Whites at 8.9. So for Whites, that's an underrepresentation of about factor 3, 3.5. Okay, we're going to be looking at robbery next. Robbery, the highest percentage of victims is Black at 29.5, or excuse me, Hispanic at 41.8, Black at 29.5, and White at 12.8. And you see the highest offenders for robbery are Blacks at 59.1, Hispanics at 32.0, and White at 5.3. So for Whites, that's an underrepresentation by a factor of 6 in terms of perpetrators. Now we look at felony assault. And this will be the last one we look at, guys. We're going to scroll through the rest just to show you. You guys can pause it. But at this point, you guys are getting the repetition of being able to look at this on your own. So we have Black at 41.6 of victims for assault, Hispanic at 34.2% of victims of assault, and White at 11.9. Now we see Blacks are 51.4% of the assault arrests in New York City. Hispanics are 33.6, and Whites are 8.3. So for Whites, that's an underrepresentation by around a factor 4. And I'm just doing mental math here. I said, hey, 32 divided by 8 is 4. So it's an underrepresentation by a factor of 4. Now we have grand larceny. We can see that. We can see the distribution here. And we're coming up with kind of similar trends between the three cohorts of Black, White, Hispanic, mainly because these are our three biggest cohorts of population in New York City. So they have grand larceny, misdemeanor sex crimes, misdemeanor assault and related offenses, petite larceny, and then we have misdemeanor criminal mischief. And actually, sorry if I'm scrolling too fast, feel free to pause and look at the data yourself. Criminal mischief, shootings. To me, this is a very super underrepresentation. I'm only looking at White right now. So Whites are 32% of the population and 1.7% of the shooting perpetrators, which is super, to me, a mega underrepresentation. And as you can see, there's some higher ones here with misdemeanor criminal mischief and petite larceny. So I'm not cherry picking data here, guys. I'm just looking at some of the interesting data that I'm starting to see now. But it's all here for you guys to draw your own conclusions. We see that we have the ability to look at firearm arrests, proactive offenses, drug arrests and allegations. We have property crime. We have violent crime and stop, question, and frisk. Okay, this is a controversial one. Stop, question, and frisk. So, understandably so, because this is police going up to individuals and for no documented reason, and they may have reasons. And actually, I do believe that police are pretty good at picking up patterns because they're on the streets looking at people all day. But let's look at this because this could be a feeder for some of the data. So the percent of suspects, that were, or the percent of stops of stop and frisk were 56.6% Black, 30.4% Hispanic, and 9.1% White. So I want you guys to definitely consider that when you're looking at this data. It's important. It's important to look at the whole picture. And we're looking at juvenile victims for felony misdemeanor complaints, and then you get the appendix. So we're under 10 minutes, guys. I'm going to link both of these documents here in the description. Just a little analysis or deep dive of the crime and enforcement activity in New York City for the year 2020. Thank you guys for joining, and I hope you guys took a little bit out of this and at least learned to look into the data before you get those clickbait headlines. All right, guys, and I apologize if I ever do some clickbait titles on my videos or pictures. I'm trying to bring people in to draw their own conclusions. I respect any constructive criticism you guys can give me on my videos or approach. I'm always looking to better myself. So thank you guys for joining, and stay curious.